Good morning, everybody, and welcome. This is Natasha from Governance Services. I'm just going to move to agenda item number 1 first, just for clarity. And Councillor A. Hutchinson was nominated as chair prior to the start of the meeting. Could I just ask that members are agreeable to this approach?
Yes, quite happy.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson is formally elected as chair. So over to you, Chair.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this remote hearing of the Licensing Subcommittee. My name is Councillor Andrew Hutchison. I'll be chairing today's hearing. Before I proceed further, could I remind everyone that today's meeting is being streamed live on the City Council's YouTube channel. Could I ask the following members of the subcommittee to introduce themselves? Councillor Flynn.
Good morning, Councillor Flynn, Billy Flynn from Adlam Wharfdale Ward.
And Councillor Marshall Katung.
Good morning, it's Councillor Abigail Marshall Katung from Little London Woodhouse and the City Centre.
Okay, thank you. And I am Councillor Hutchison at Morley North Ward. So I'd like to start the hearing today by confirming that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee meets the requirements of the Council's constitution, even though members of the panel are in remote attendance. While items today will be fully discussed as usual, remote attendance requires a few slight changes as to how I will manage the debate. Therefore, can all attendees mute their microphones unless I invite them to speak? This will avoid disruption from background noise. Can all participants please keep their cameras on during the hearing? All participants will be invited to introduce themselves at the start of the hearing to make it clear to public observers who will be involved in proceedings. I ask for your assistance and patience while I go through this process. Could I now invite officers to introduce themselves and mute your microphone once you have introduced yourself? I'll start with Rob Brown from Legal Services.
Good morning, I'm Robert Brown. I'm a solicitor and I'm legal advisor to the subcommittee today.
I've got Matthew Nelson, Entertainment Licensing.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew. I'm part of Entertainment Licensing.
Natasha Prosser, Governance Services.
Hello, everyone. Natasha Prosser, Governance Services and Clark.
And could I ask the applicant of the review application to introduce themselves? I think we've got Andy Clifford, West Yorkshire Police.
Morning, yeah, PC Andy Clifford from West Yorkshire Police Licensing.
Thanks, Andy. And we've got Joanne Sheriff.
Morning, Joanne Sharif, lifelong citizen of Leeds.
Thank you. And please, can I ask the premises license holder and their representative to introduce themselves? I think we've got Suky Cheema. Where are they? Are they here? Does it look like they've dropped off somewhere? Do we know where they've gone?
I'm just going to try and make contact with them now. Just bear with me 1 second.
Okay, thanks, Matthew.
Thank you.
This is the kind of thing that happens, Andy, and there's nothing you can do about it, you know.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing there.
What's happened?
You're muted, Andy.
What's gone wrong?
The applicant or the shop holder has disappeared from the screen.
Oh dear.
How did it go this morning, or should we ask?
Sorry, can I just remind members that we are still broadcasting live, and so if we could just remain muted for the time being. I understand that Matthew's trying to get in touch with the applicant to ensure that they can get back in. Thank you.
Right, so I've called the license holder, Mr. Singh. They're having problems with their internet connection, but he's asked if he can dial in. I don't know how that will be for presenting the video or the CCTV footage.
I guess if he's agreeing on doing that, if I guess if he's happy to do that, we accept it. It's only them that would not be able to see the video unless it gives them a bit of extra time to get their internet sorted out. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'll explain that the footage there's pertinent clips that are going to be shown, but it's a copy of what they've already received. So there's nothing new that's been added there. Tasha, do you have the telephone number for them to call into the meeting?
I'll just ask one of my colleagues in governance to see
right.
if they have that original invite.
Thank you. To let you know, Tasha, I've got some numbers here which have been saved the last time I went in. I think these are just standard numbers, and then when you call them, it asks you to enter your meeting ID and the passcode.
I think that's right, Matthew.
Yeah.
If you could pass on that phone number, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll do that. All right, thank you. Hello everyone. So I've just been on the phone while they've joined the meeting and they've been added now as a telephone number and a call-in. I've explained to the applicant and his representative that the CCTV footage will be viewed but will be forwarded to pertinent points, and the copy, what's going to be shown has already been sent with the application form, and they're happy with that.
Okay. Do we know to what point the license holder got to with regards to our script? Did they manage to get are they happy for us to continue straight on after their introductions? I note that the telephone dial-in is muted. Is it possible to unmute that so they can speak? There we go.
Hi, sorry, I didn't know I expressed star 6. It's Mr. Cheema here, and I'm here with Mr. Singh, the license holder.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cheema, Mr. Singh. Are you happy for us to continue from where we got to when you left the meeting previously?
Yeah, that's fine. We'd just like to apologise. We seem to have lost our internet signal all of a sudden when the meeting started. But we're okay to do it this way, as we've received everything that you're probably going to be viewing, and we're on a laptop, okay, so I can still view all this.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so we will continue from where we left off from there. So I believe it's down to the clerk, John.
Yes, Chair, thank you. It's Natasha.
Sorry, Natasha.
No. So under agenda item number 2, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. And under agenda item number 3, appendix A and B of the submitted report has been exempt under 9.2b and 10.41 of the Regulation 14, the Licensing Act 2003, Hearings Regulations 2005. Therefore, could I ask that members resolve to exclude the press and the public from the meeting should you require any discussion on those appendices? Under agenda item number 4, there are no formal late items. And under agenda number 5, please could I ask members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests?
None from myself.
None from me.
And none from me.
Thank you. I'll take that as none. Back to you, Chair.
Thanks, Natasha. Agenda item number 6, the review of the premises license for Neil's Superstore, 9 to 11 Reginald Row, Chapeltown, LS7 3HP. Could the legal advisor to the subcommittee outline the procedure for the hearing, please?
Thank you. It's Robert Brown. Our usual procedure for this type of application is that the applicant, in this case West Yorkshire Police, would address the committee first. The other parties, and in this case that's the licence holder and their representative, will then address the committee. And then West Yorkshire Police would have the chance to respond to anything said by the other parties. In making its determination, the subcommittee will consider what is appropriate and proportionate to promote the licensing objectives, namely 1, the prevention of crime and disorder, 2, the promotion of public safety, 3, the prevention of public nuisance, and 4, the protection of children from harm. The regulations permit the subcommittee to set a time limit on presentations, providing the same time limit is applied to all parties. Our usual time limit is 15 minutes per party. And the applicant may wish to split their allocation between their initial presentation and their subsequent response to the other parties. For example, 10 minutes initially and then 5 minutes at the end. The chair may wish to ask the parties whether or not they think 15 minutes will be sufficient at this point.
PC Clifford, is 15 minutes sufficient for yourself?
Morning. Yeah. For me, I'd probably ask if you could allocate Joanne a little bit of speaking time. The things that I've got to say will probably take me around 7 or 8 minutes. So that's the only thing that I'd really ask, if that's okay.
Okay, and the so Joanne, do you know roughly how long you'll be speaking for?
Just a few minutes, thank you.
Like 3 minutes, is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
So if we do that, then that'll give you 5 minutes PC Clifford at the end, if you need to sum up after the license holder.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Okay, and then the back over to you, Rob, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Then a time limit of 15 minutes per party will apply to all presentations. After each presentation, the subcommittee members may wish to ask questions. The time for questions to be asked and answered is in addition to the time set for presentations. You've explained how you wish to split your time, but bear in mind that the clock will be ticking, so if you overrun, then you will be cut off. Please note that we do not permit cross-examination in subcommittee. If any party feels there is a crucial question that needs to be asked and answered, please do not ask the person directly, but instead make a request to the chair, who will determine whether or not the question should be put. Parties may request permission to call witnesses. Now, I understand that West Yorkshire Police intend to call Mrs. Sharif as a witness today. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. All documents that have previously been submitted have been copied and circulated to the subcommittee in advance. It might be useful to confirm that we all have the same original pack with the agenda, report to the licensing subcommittee concerning this application, and with appendices. There's a pack which runs to numbered page 56. Could I confirm that you all have a copy of that, or a copy accessible to you now?
Yes.
I do, yeah.
Okay, there are also some documents within that which have been provided by the police, but which are not for public disclosure and would not, therefore do not appear on the internet. It would be helpful when referring to documents to identify which document you're referring to by page number or letter in some cases. Additional documents may now only be tabled with the consent of all the parties. Are there any additional documents that either party would like the committee to consider?
No further documents from us.
No, there's none from me.
Thank you. Please note your presentation is your only opportunity to address the subcommittee. There's no further right to sum up your case. So you need to make sure that you've said everything that you wish to say and have taken into account in your presentation. After all parties have made their presentations and after all the questions have been considered, members will decide whether they have all the information they require to make a decision. Once this point is reached, members of the committee will go into a private session. If members have any additional questions to ask, they will return to the meeting to ask those questions. They will then return to private session to continue their deliberations. Can all parties please remain in the meeting until they are actually asked to leave? All the parties will be informed once the hearing has ended and will be advised of the decision in writing within 5 working days of today's date. Can I ask if there are any representations or any queries about the procedure we propose to follow today?
None from us.
Could I just ask in relation to the CCTV that I know that we're going to be moving on to like a private lobby to view that, my witness Joanne isn't able to view the CCTV as there's an ongoing criminal investigation, and I don't want her to view it and that impacts the criminal side of things.
Right, that's fine from a legal perspective from my point of view. Chair?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So the actual CCTV footage, do we know when that's going to be viewed? At what point during the proceedings?
I would suggest maybe view that first and then go on to speaking time, but you know, I'm open to suggestions.
Okay, I'm happy with that as long as we're all clear that. So we'll watch the CCTV first, and then we'll go on to the applicant and then the respondent speaking. Okay. Okay, so thanks, Rob. Could the licensing officer present the application, please?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Chair. So today, members are asked to consider an application made under Section 51 of the Licensing Act to review the premise licence for Neil's Superstore, 9 to 11 Reginald Row, Chapel Town, Leeds, LS7. The application is made by West Yorkshire Police and was served on the Licensing Authority on the 24th of March 2020. The application is made on the grounds of the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public nuisance, public safety, and the protection of children from harm. Members can find a copy of the application at Appendix A on page 11 of the report. Due to the ongoing criminal investigation and to protect personal data, this document is exempt from public viewing. In accompaniment with the application, West Yorkshire Police have also submitted additional information which can be found on Appendix B, page 19 of the report. This is also exempt from public viewing. In order to further support the review application, West Yorkshire Police have also submitted CCTV footage obtained from the premises. This will be presented by West Yorkshire Police in closed session on the day of the hearing. So both the named premise licence holder and the designated premises supervisor is Mr. Malkee in attendance today. And according to the records held by the Licensing Authority, Mr. Singh has operated the premises as a convenience store with the provision of alcohol sales consumption off the premises pre-introduction of the Licensing Act 2003. I can confirm that the Licensing Authority has not received any representations either in support of the review application sought by West Yorkshire Police or in support of the licensed premises and the licence holder. However, the licence holder's representative has supplied supporting information which is contained within the report at Appendix E on page 31. Finally, members, I would like to draw your attention to a copy of the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act at Appendix F, starting on page 51 of the report. The extract provided is relative to general review applications, and that, Chair, is the application. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. I guess we're going to go now straight to the CCTV footage. So I guess we're going to go to a breakout room to watch that, are we, Natasha?
Yes, that's correct. So the meeting will be adjourned on the webcast and we'll move yourselves into a breakout room to view that footage.
Okay, so everybody else just wait here, I guess, if you're not going to the breakout room. We'll be back shortly.
Sorry, are we still present here so we know what points you're viewing of the footage, because we do have it available to us?
So I believe that you will also be put through to the breakout room as well, Mr. Cheema, Mr. Singh.
Perfect, thank you.
Hi Harriet, we're ready to resume the meeting.
Okay, is everybody back that needs to be here?
Mr. Cheema, Mr. Singer present.
Yeah, thank you for that. Can I just remind people as well that now that we are back on the main meeting, that is being streamed live on the Leeds City Council YouTube channel. Okay, just a reminder. Is a PC? Oh, there you go. There you are. Yeah. Okay, so if everybody's present and back, if we can invite West Yorkshire Police to present their case for reviewing the premises licence. I believe you've got 7 minutes, and then Mrs. Sharif.
Thank you. So the facts in this case are simple. 2 local residents were the victim of a violent crime and, amongst other things, had payment cards stolen. Those payment cards were used at Neil's numerous times to buy items including alcohol. At least one of those males using the cards and served alcohol was underage. No ID was requested. Payment method was passed between the suspects in front of the shop workers. Both Mr. Singh and the shop worker served alcohol to somebody underage. Most transactions took place in a 1 hour period and came to a total of almost £700. So many of these facts are a red flag for the shop, and for the shop to not pick up on them would suggest either ineptitude, willful ignorance, or some kind of understanding between the shop and the main suspects. What would lead me immediately to discount ineptitude is a fact presented by the owner that he has operated this shop for 27 years. He's not a new shopkeeper, he's experienced at running his business and must know his customers, as the majority will be local rather than passing trade. The owner has not once shown any remorse or taken personal responsibility for what has happened. Instead, he has looked to attack the agency bringing this review, yet it was he and his staff who sold alcohol to an underage male, authorised almost 30 transactions in 1 hour, totaling just under £700. I would suggest a small shop such as this would not make £700 in 1 day, or even 2, but in 1 hour. In addition, who realistically could afford that, never mind a 17-year-old? I know that I certainly could not. I believe that this could be motivated by greed. Each transaction would have raised slightly the suspicion level by any honest person. Somewhere between transaction 2 and 3 should begin to raise the levels. How can transaction 10, 15 and 20 not be ringing any alarm bells? What about when transactions start to be declined and the males carried on purchasing alcohol? Obviously, the reason there's so many transactions is the contactless payment limit. But why would someone who owned the card need to do this? They would know the PIN and be able to buy all these items in fewer transactions. Let's also look at another fact. Where these payment methods were stolen, it's about 1 mile away from where Neil's Superstore is. There are a number of places closer, or that they would have had to walk past in order to get to Neil's. The most sensible solution for these males would have been to go to the nearest shop before the payment method was cancelled by the victim and potentially costing them financially. It seems that there was a risk and reward gamble that paid off for them by passing larger chains and smaller independent shops where they would likely be challenged. I believe the character references are irrelevant.
They do not negate what has happened here, which is a serious breach of the licensing objectives. Your councillor colleagues, when giving references, were not presented with the full facts when they were providing letters of support, but you are. They may have acted more cautiously had they known the severity of what has happened. I would also like to point out that many of the letters appear to have been written by Mr. Singh or a representative of his, and a few nominal blanks have been filled in. These surely can't be considered as personal references, as they are all the same letter and represent Mr. Singh's own thoughts of himself. The other two letters make no reference to the desperate need for him to be selling alcohol or negate what has happened. Mr. Singh has stated that he checked the ID of the suspects historically and was satisfied they were both 18. We know for certain that one was 17 at the time that this happened, and both look young on CCTV. If he is making this statement, the implication is that 1, he has sold them both alcohol before, admitting further offences, and 2, that he knows who these males are. So how can it be that they can make so many transactions on a stranger's card? Mr. Singh states they allow payment methods to be passed amongst people when they know they have authorisation, and states that this was the case in this matter. I'm sure Joanne can confirm that they did not have authority, so this is in fact a lie. He has also stated that CCTV shows somebody checking the card. What was the conclusion of this check? They admit to knowing the suspects, so the name cannot have matched, and we know that the name was in the name of Ms. Joanne Sharif. Mr. Singh mentions that they always ask a person if they have authority to use a card if it's not theirs. Are we just to assume that someone with dishonest intentions will answer that question honestly? Did he ask the suspects in this case? Mr. Singh mentions that I would not understand retail as I've probably not worked in it. The fact is I have, and I know people who do. I understand that people may come in multiple times a day, but it is a leap to compare that with what has happened in this case. To try and state it is similar for someone buying a can of Coke and then coming in later for another item, and then again, it's not the same as two youths spending hundreds of pounds in back-to-back transactions in such a short space of time. To suggest so is misdirection on Mr. Singh's part. Mr. Singh claims that due to the years he's operated, he knows all of his customers by name. This is a further fact that concerns me. If he knows everyone's name, he has ID'd these suspects in the past and clearly knows them. He states he has checked the payment method. How is it possible that he proceeded to allow further transactions? It all just seems so dishonest. There appears to be a number of clues that despite an apparent good reputation, that these things may have happened previously but gone unnoticed, which I've outlined. It was only the sheer audacity of this incident and the diligence of the investigating officer that it was brought to our attentions. What concerns me is that no responsibility has been taken whatsoever by Mr. Singh. All he has done is try to divert attention away from himself by attacking the process and poke holes in what has been served today. The victim is here today. I would urge you to allow her some time to speak or ask directly any questions you have so that she can give a real honest account of how subsequent crimes which occurred at Neil's affected her that day. For all the previous mentioned issues, West Yorkshire Police seek to revoke the premises licence at Neil's Superstore in order to uphold all the licensing objectives, specifically the protection of children from harm and prevention of crime and disorder. Thank you.
Thank you for that, PC Clifford. And I believe Mr. Sharif would like to speak, utilising part of the 10 minutes for the applicant. In your own time, Mrs. Sharif.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you fine, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I've had time to write this down while I was in the waiting room. So it was Friday evening, 31st of January at 6:40 p.m. Brexit Day, hard enough to swallow. To be mugged only a few yards from my home. To witness my husband being verbally abused, threatened and physically assaulted is deeply traumatising. Having to involve the police, contact banks, Vodafone, and tell our two daughters, both studying in different cities, that we had been attacked by video, because of course neither of us had a phone, is hard enough. But to then learn that 31 separate transactions had been made, plus 4 declined, at Neil's Superstore, a shop that I walk by regularly because I have a very close relative who lives very nearby. The first of which was within 15 minutes of the attack, is absolutely devastating. The money was eventually credited back to us at a cost to the banks. The phones were eventually replaced at a cost to us because unfortunately we didn't have insurance. But the emotional turmoil is still with us, particularly my husband, who now suffers with anxiety, is fearful when anybody comes anywhere near him, suspicious of everyone around, has acquired a car to get from here to Cafe Nero, which is not very far away. Because unfortunately, the place where the attack happened is literally a few yards from where we live. I don't believe Mr. Singh's contention, in all his evidence here, that he was not colluding or in collusion with these youths. We have been left with the consequences of this attack. And in my opinion, those youths knew exactly where to go, where they would get transactions agreed to. They passed. There are 3 big shops much nearby, Co-op, Tesco and Lidl, where of course they would have been ID'd. So they knew exactly where to go. That's my opinion. And it's absolutely awful to know that that's happening in our community. And I would hate for another resident in the Chapel Allerton ward to suffer what we've suffered. That's all I've got to say.
Thanks for that, Mrs. Sharif. So if the applicant has no further admissions, could go to ward members, and if the subcommittee ward members, if you have any questions, go to you first, Councillor Flynn.
I'll wait until after both parties have spoken. Okay, thanks. And yourself, Councillor Marshall? The same. Okay, so yeah, so what we'll move straight then on to invite the premises licence holder for their representative to present their case, and as Councillor Flynn suggested there, that we'll probably ask questions of both parties after we've heard both submissions. So can I invite the premises licence and their representative, please? I think he's on mute. You're on mute, Mr. Cheema and Mr. Singh. You may need to unmute your phone.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll refer to Neil Superstores throughout our submissions as Neil's. I'm purely here in the capacity to assist Malkee Singh in making his submissions. All submissions I've been making have been reviewed and agreed by Malkee Singh. So it's not my view, it's his. As part of the submissions we're about to make, we'd like to invite the review panel to ensure they have reviewed the letter issued to the police by Neil's. And although the officer says that the 14 character references that have been provided aren't really character references, we would submit that we refute that. And some of the points we are going to make in our submissions are validated by those character references found in Appendix E of the bundle. We do want to highlight something before we start going into our submissions. That's in respect to the application, the Rev 1 form found in Appendix A of the bundle at about page 18. It was drafted by PC 4198 Andrew Clifford, and we're a bit alarmed that it's not signed, and therefore there's no declaration formally provided to affirm the contents of the application are true to his beliefs. We therefore submit it for the review panel to consider and draw its own inference in respect to the contents of the application and whether the application is a formal one that's valid. We do, however, note that the guidance notes at the bottom of the application at point 4 state the application must be signed. As this is a formal process and can have profound consequences for both Neil and Mr. Singh, therefore we believe the contents of the application do require a form of affirmation, as otherwise the same has no consequences to the drafter of the application, which we would submit would be unfair on all those concerned. So we won't reiterate the main points in respect of why there is a revocation of the licence, as we're aware that the West Yorkshire Police, which will refer to them as the police as part of our submissions, that they're seeking that we are undermining all 4 licensing objectives: the prevention of crime and disorder, 2, public safety, 3, the prevention of public nuisance, and 4, the protection of children from harm. The police believe that obviously Neil seems to be in breach of all 4, and that's the reasons behind the application. So in respect of point 1, the police believe Neil do nothing to promote any of the licensing objectives and appear to have actively undermined them for its own financial gain. In response to this, we submit Neil has operated within the premises for over 27 years. Neil have never ever been the subject of any criminal investigation over this period of time because of their actions or in indirect actions. In support and in stark contrast to what has been alleged and opined by the police, Neil do in fact promote the licensing objectives. Neil has seen and been made aware of various public disorders over many, many years and made a conscious effort to work with the police to assist wherever they can. Neil have provided evidence both by way of written statements and CCTV to the police to use on many, many occasions to assist with the prosecutions they are or were pursuing at the time. We invite the police to check their records for the number of occasions where Neil have assisted and will always continue to do so where such activities have taken place by the public. Over the 2+ decades, Neil have worked with many PCSOs, PCs, DCs, DCIs, superintendents, inspectors and commissioners where they've been approached to assist where they can with public disorders which have taken place in the wider area they operate within, namely the Shawbrook and Mexborough areas of Chapeltown, and therefore further submit Neil's do their utmost to ensure they try to protect and promote the licensing objectives when and wherever they can. Neil's have allowed police to stand in their premises and work with them to ensure the local community is aware the area is well policed and that Neil's assist the police where it can. Neil's have received many, many thanks of accommodation from the police with the assistance they have provided over many, many years, where they have confirmed our assistance has both helped prosecute and disrupt social misconduct in the wider area. We therefore submit, we refute the opinion that Neil's do not promote the licensing objectives. Neil's would also further submit for the record they have never ever had either the premises and or personal license reviewed historically. This is the first and only instance of the same. The police have never expressed any concerns with Neil's operation under the licensing rules, and neither have the police ever questioned and or assisted Neil's on the same. In respect to the application made itself, which is under review today, you can clearly see Neil's have attempted to assist the police to bring those to justice of the crimes which were committed on the 31st of the 1st, 2020. The police approached Neil's to review the CCTV footage in order to attempt to identify the suspects were. This we submit clearly indicates that Neil do promote the licensing objectives and assist the authorities where they can, although in this instance it seems this was down to their own detriment for unfounded reasons and lack of any objective evidence in support of the same. We submit Neil's were deeply, deeply concerned to learn that some of their customers had conducted such actions which we say is wholly unacceptable. As a result, Neil's have banned all concerned parties from entering the premises ever again and made it abundantly clear to them why Neil's have decided to take such draconian action against them too. This is an action Neil's have taken with various customers both historically and will continue to do so going forward. Under no circumstances does Neil tolerate any such actions or behaviours from any persons or persons, and Neil's will always do their utmost to ensure the communities that they operate and serve within do their part to maintain the safety of the public, the staff and their customers. 2. The police believe Neil Superstar is working in collusion with suspects which effectively do not assist in preventing other robberies and associated crimes, and this is a public safety issue. We know the police are seeking a full revocation of the premises licence under review due to their opinion that Neil works in collusion with potential suspects. Neils refutes this opinion and finds the same quite defamatory, to say the least. We submit that this is the second instance in over 27 years of Neils operating where a stolen credit or debit card has been used at the premises. Given the sheer number of card transactions Neils have processed over that period, the number of illegal transactions identified, one would say, is very, very minute. Had Neils been working in collusion with the known suspects, surely the volume of such illegal transactions would have been far, far greater. The police have formed an opinion about Neils based on one occasion and assume they have formed that opinion based on the number of transactions taken in a short period of time. However, it's no different from any other day. This is a frustration of Neils and has been for many, many years. Neil asks customers to simply buy what they need and make one transaction, as not only does it cost them per transaction, but it also takes up more of their time and slows down how quickly they can serve other customers. Neils have customers that come in, as the West Yorkshire Police have said, and we confirm that they buy a can of Coke, then they come 5 minutes later and buy some cigarettes, and then again they come later to buy some alcohol. Although Neils find it strange and any onlooker would, however, Neils have seen this type of customer behaviour for over 20 years and they're kind of used to it. The police allege Neils allow customers to pass debit and credit cards amongst each other. Neils have customers that often come into the shop to use parents, siblings, friends' cards. Sorry, let me just pause there whilst I do apologise. And carers come in to use people that they're caring for's cards to make payments. Neils have always asked if they have authority. Even in the matter under review, you can clearly see Malkee being checked whose card was being used to buy goods. This, we submit, objectively demonstrates Neils are doing what they can to prevent crime and fraud. However, on the side note, Neils would like to add, after further reviewing the CCTV footage, Mr. Singh has spoken to the shop assistant and asked that he be more prudent when taking multiple payments from one customer to ask questions to ensure all is above board. The police state that Neils and the accused have some type of understanding between them and that they allow them to stand aside in order to serve other customers before them. This is quite common at Neils. Most customers know each other and are quite easygoing to allow other customers to be served before them. Likewise, given the many, many years Neils have operated in the area, they know all the customers by name, who their family members are, and try and build a rapport where they can. This is both from a customer service point of view and to ensure we maintain a good public opinion. The police suggest that Neils complicit in co-conspirators to the crime. We submit this is completely unfounded and untrue. If Neils speaks to someone who had conducted a crime, Neils don't know what they've done. Neils know them as someone else. Not everyone knows everyone as well as they should. How can Neils be held responsible for other people's actions and for not knowing who they really are or what they've been up to? Neils would like the review panel to also be aware that neither Malkee Singh nor any member of his staff have ever been arrested in connection to this crime which took place on the 31st of 1st, 2020. Therefore, ask the question to the police, if Neils was working in collusion with the suspects, would they not have been questioned on the same? We find the lack of approach to Neils by the police is in contrast to what they're applying and ask the panel to take the same into consideration. 3, the police believe the suspects have hung around Neils whilst transactions are taking place. In addition, alcohol is sold to them. Therefore, this constitutes a public nuisance issue. In response, we submit this is not true. Neils do not allow anyone to mill around the shop. Neils have always moved any groups on to try and attempt to do the same on hanging outside the premises. Neils is a quite small shop and only has one entrance and exit. Therefore, if groups were hanging outside the shop, this would be a hindrance to others which wanted to visit the shop. Hence why Neils does not accept anyone to hang around outside the shop, and therefore the opinion formed by the police is wholly unfounded and untrue. We submit no objective evidence has been provided by the police in the respect of this opinion. We therefore invite the police to provide any objective evidence it may have. Neils is in the middle of a commercial premises of 3 within the parade of Reginald Row. All 3 commercial premises are owned by the local council. To the right of Neils, if facing out from Neils, is a West Indian takeaway. People generally visit the takeaway in groups. If the police are suggesting that is those said groups they are referring to, this is completely out of Neils' control of how other commercial premises choose to operate. Moving on to the left of Neils is a charity to assist children. Therefore, on the same occasion, there are groups of children stood outside those premises. Again, this is outside of Neil's control. And in all fairness, in respect to that charity, there's nowhere else for the children to go if on a break. In respect of alcohol being sold to groups, we submit this is true. Neil's is a shop where many pass by on their way to barbecues, parties, or to the park, for instance. Therefore, they visit the shop and each group member generally buys alcohol amongst other items for others in the group or individually for themselves as it's convenient for them, given it's en route to wherever they intend of going. Take, for example, when the carnival is on, Neil's has many, many groups which visit over the 3 days the festival is on. The same happens on those occasions too. Neil's cannot ask customers that they only one person can purchase any goods for the whole group. That's surely down to the customers themselves to decide. How can Neil's be held responsible for how customers behave when making purchases in groups? 4, the police allege one of the suspects is 17 years old and alcohol was served to him, and this does not promote the protection of children from harm. The police state Neil's do not check the age of customers when they sell alcohol. We submit this is both untrue and completely unfounded. The 2 customers Neil served on the day and time under review, Neil's have checked the ID of both historically. As far as Neil is aware, both are over the age of 18. One of the customers had shown Neil his passport historically, and the other his student card, which both confirmed they were over the age of 18. The police have assumed because Neil did not request to check ID or proof of age on this occasion that they were in breach. However, Neil is unsure if the licensing rules require them to check a person's age irrespective if they've seen a valid proof of age document historically. I myself could not find any material on the same, although I do know in Appendix F, Annex 1.3 gives some guidance. However, it's ambiguous in respect of knowing someone's age and what one should do in such circumstances. However, Neil's would like some clarification on the same, and if he was in breach of the license laws or rules, Neil is profoundly apologetic and will ensure once clarifications have been provided that we will work with the relevant legislation. That's all the submissions we have to make at this juncture in respect to the application under review. I believe Mr. Singh does want to say something as well, and if I could just kindly pass over to him.
Where do we stand on time at the moment with regards to this submission?
He's only going to have about 30 seconds to a minute. I believe that might have taken about 13 minutes for our submission.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear Mr. Singh.
Okay. First, I'd like to say, obviously, Mr. Cheema was representing me, but I had to add listened to the lady's statement. It made me upset, and I'd just like to apologise. What happened to her and her husband, and I do deeply apologise.
That's all Mr. Singh wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that. So we will now go to questions that I'm sure colleagues have a few. So if Councillor Finn, do you want to come in with a question?
So do we not go back to BC Clifford to him to address the points that have just been made?
We can do that if you wish. We can go back to, if PC Clifford wants to round up with his 5 minutes.
Sorry, Chair, you could perhaps have the questions now from each side, and then PC Clifford may want to sum up, having answered those questions, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what are colleagues happy with us to do that?
I'm happy to wait till after all of the presentations have been made.
Okay, and Councillor Marshall Katong?
Same, please.
Okay, all right. So I'll hand back to PC Clifford then, if you want to sum up, and then we'll go to questions after your 5 minutes.
Thank you. The submission that we've just listened to, I believe, is all smoke and mirrors. There's the briefest apology at the end, but the body of that was addressing nothing to do with what happened that night. everything's about the history. Well, your history doesn't erase the present, but the present can erase the history. And no matter what good you've done in the past, the simple fact remains that and his colleague sold alcohol to a juvenile, and not just low alcohol, we're talking spirits. You know, we all saw the CCTV, we saw how young these boys looked. They were sold bottles and bottles of vodka, brandy, high volume stuff, things that look like Blue Wicked, things like that, cigarettes, has negated any of that. And the simple fact, they talk about the checking of IDs unfounded. It's not unfounded. There was no ID checked that night, that day. For whatever reason, no suspicions were raised when there were so many transactions. Even when transactions were being declined, they were allowed to use a different payment method. These are all red flags. The fact that they've been ID'd in the past just shows that they've been ID'd, they've possibly presented fake ID or whatever. I mean, these lads have been sold alcohol, so do we make any wonder why they commit a serious offence and they know they can go and get served at meals? Just there's still no responsibility taken for anything that's occurred that night. And the fact is, children were served alcohol. £700 went through that till in a 1 hour period, and around 30 transactions were made, and that for any honest person would have raised alarm bells. Just going to touch back on the character references. They said that they do feel that they are relevant. How can 12 letters that are written the exact same, not written by that person, be relevant? If you're going to hand somebody a letter that you've pre-written and they just sign it, that's not their thoughts, that's somebody else's thoughts. So I do urge you to discount some of those character references. But again, the character references do not negate what's happened, which is a serious breach of the licensing objectives. We've had further offences happening in relation to the fraudulent use of bank cards and things of that nature. And just to talk about an item that hasn't been signed by myself in a document, it doesn't undo what has happened on this day. And I don't believe that any honest person can sit and watch that and think that was okay, that was fine. They didn't go to Tesco's, they didn't go to Lidl, and I think they knew that they'd be ID'd, they weren't old enough, and they won't be allowed to do that. And that was the same for a number of other shops, not just big chain shops, other shops that they walk past that aren't big chains. So, you know, everything they've talked about they've done in the past, the evidence that I present today suggests different. It suggests that there is something underhand happening at that shop. So I think that's all I've got to say on the matter. Thank you.
Thanks, PC Clifford. Okay, so we'll go to questions. Is Councillor? Oh, there you are, Councillor Flynn. So we'll go around with questions to both the applicant and licence holder. Councillor Flynn, would you like to start?
Yeah, just a couple of points of clarification first. Did PC Clifford say he wasn't able to identify one of the two suspects, or was that other people who were in the shop?
That's the police investigation. One of the suspects has been identified through that investigation. The other that we talked about has not been identified at this point.
These are one of the two people who were buying goods in the shop?
Correct, yeah. So one of those males was identified. One of them was not identified.
So I understood Mr. Singh and Mr. Cheema to indicate in both written and spoken evidence that they knew every customer that comes in. And yeah. I just wondered, what the explanation was for that. I've got another question after that.
Yeah, so the customers in question are known. They come to the shop quite often, but they've been banned ever since we heard that they were involved in such an incident, these actions. So they haven't been allowed in the shops since, and they won't be allowed ever again either. So that's the type of action we've taken in respect of positively identifying them and the card and the payment method that was used. He advised Mr. Singh it was his father's card and his mother's card. And a bit like we said in our submissions, there's many people that come to the shop using their card. Some of the character references provided would affirm that as well. There is an old people's home, nursing home, and most of the area on the right-hand side, there's many carers that bring their carers. Even one of the suspects in this case goes to that lady's house and picks her card up and buys shopping for her.
So could I just go back to the question I asked, which was that I understood that Mr. Singh knows every customer who comes in, but the police have been unable to identify one of those two suspects, which would suggest that Mr. Singh doesn't know one of those suspects.
He does know the two people in question, and in fact, over that whole hour video, he could tell you the names of each individual. If that assists, if you're not aware of what their names are. Like we said, the police have never ever approached us to assist in this inquiry other than taking the CCTV that we handed willfully because we knew it was involved in some type of crime. That's assisting the police. The police have never approached us since then to ask for further assistance. We're inviting to come now and we can give you all the assistance you need. If you want to put these suspects and justice to prevail and they are imprisoned or whatever action is taken, we're more than willing to help. It's the police that don't want to talk to us. We find that fine.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cheema. I think there's some feedback coming from somebody's television. It sounds like.
I've left my mic on. Well, up to a point.
Okay. Do you want to come back on another one there?
Well, it seems that one of the youths was 17. It's been proved that he was 17. One of the customers who was served. Although Mr. Singh or Mr. Cheema seem to indicate that there's been evidence produced previously that both of these were over 18. But one is, I understand, 17. Is that correct?
I think BC Clifford.
Yeah, one of the males is 17. I pointed it out a few times. There were two males, and he was 17, and he was served alcohol by both Mr. Singh and the previous shopkeeper.
Okay, thank you. Just moving on, if that's okay, Andy. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, give you one more, then we'll go on to Marshall, Councillor Marshall.
Okay. It looks like there's been somewhere in the region of 28 to 31, depending on which paperwork we've looked at, transactions that took place in around about an hour. Is that usual from the same sort of two people, as it were, in the shop? And the takings of best part of £700, is that an unusual sort of event during the course of an hour's transactions?
I think that's to Mr. Cheema, Mr. Singh.
Yeah, that's fine. There's nothing unusual in respect to the number of transactions for one payment method. We gave examples. Various groups do come and they buy alcohol and they buy cigarettes and other items on behalf of the group. They do it in multiple transactions. For whatever reason they do it. It is a bugbear of Neil's and has been for the number of years they've operated there. In respect to the value, yes, it's not uncommon for Neil's to take that sort of taking in an hour's window. Weekends busy, Friday night, there are peaks and troughs to turnover in the shop. Particularly hot days, large numbers of transactions large volumes of transactions for people local in the area. The area likes to party and likes to go to the park and have barbecues and things such as that. So yes, it's not unheard of to have that number of transactions from a single payment method or two payment methods, for instance, from one group of people.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
Okay, I'm sure we'll have more questions as it goes along. So I think just to be sort of fair, we'll go a few questions amongst each ward member. So Councillor Marshall, Tom.
All right, thank you very much. And first of all, to Joanne, so sorry to hear about the ordeal you went through. And I really hope yourself and your husband will find some strength to go through what you have been through. To Mr. Singh, now you say you know, so it's very similar question to Councillor Flynn, but just being a bit more specific, because you do know almost everyone who comes through to your shop. These young people who came and obviously were buying your alcohol, as young as they looked, did you think that they were all over 18?
Yes. I'll give you an example. The other day, somebody came in. It was a
No,
big
sorry.
lad,
Can we just stick to the four that we're referring to on the 31st of January? So
Yeah.
those young, what we have seen on the video, that's the specific. Because if you're referring to other people, I wasn't there. So I would like us to be on the same frequency that we're referring to people that we both have seen. So you believed all of them were over 18 and you have checked all of them previously?
Yes.
So all of them who walked in.
Yeah, like I said, that particular day, obviously some of them look young, but I knew they were 18 above.
So all of them who came in, from what you have seen, you knew all of them were 18 and you have checked them previously. I'm just trying to make sure that that's the case.
Yes, madam, yes. I checked them before, and the two suspects that I served, yes, they were 18. I think one was 19.
Okay. I'll also ask you another question. On a regular day, what would you say is your average sale on alcohol only?
Right, on say a weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's normally...
on a weekday.
Oh, right, a weekday. It all depends. Normally on alcohol and cigs, I don't know, 1,000.
About £1,000.
I think we seem to be losing Mr. Cheema and Mr. Singh. Are you having problems with your telephone?
Just check our signal. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, that seems to be a bit better.
I can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, so Mr. Singh, sorry if you missed it. It's about £900 to £1,000 on a weekday. You would see sales in respect of cigarettes and alcohol alone, the slow on the grocery side. And then on a weekend, the groceries pick up, and so does the sale of cigarettes and alcohol.
All right, so we would say on a weekday, the average is about £1,000, and that's the whole day.
Yeah, I mean, alcohol sales don't pick up until about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening through to about 9, half 9. It's only in a 4 or 5 hour window that the sale of alcohol, I mean, during the day, no one really buying anything other than your bread, milk, eggs, packet of crisps, a sandwich. The sale of alcohol picks up generally late afternoon, early evening till close.
Okay, thank you.
It's not the entire day. I'd probably define it as more like a quarter to a third of the day.
Okay. Also, in terms of the number of transactions you have on each payment card, you did say you have lots of multiple, it's normal to have lots of multiple transactions in the shop. So normally on one particular card, what would you say is the average multiple payments and how frequent is it?
So multiple payments on a single card method, average an hour, 2 hour period. If people are getting prepared to go to a party and things like that, that's where it's common. You know, there could be 15, 20 transactions in an hour and a half period quite easily.
And what would you say it will be the amount, average amount per transaction if they're having parties?
This is the frustration. Some might, you know, on one transaction they might spend 15, 20 pounds, another one they might spend 25, 30, you know, and then they come back in and they buy something for £2.50. The average of them all will be very hard to work out without going through the card transactions. But probably on contactless, because of the value it is, it would be probably about £20, £25 on average.
Okay, so when you did a quick check on the card and saw a different name from the gentleman that was in front of you, what was the conversation at that time?
Mr. Singh discussed this in great detail with me, and reflecting back since this and going through the footage, he does recollect that he didn't see a name at all. The gentleman said it was his father's card and then showed a picture of his father to Mr. Singh, because Mr. Singh isn't aware of who this particular customer's father is. I think he's had a few fathers, so to speak, in his life. So when he said, it's my father's, he said, let me see a picture. And that's where then it continued from there. And the picture was shown to him, it was of a similar complex of the customer. So he had no reason to doubt, and knowing the customer for a number of years he had. I mean, I say he's a customer, he's no longer a customer and will never be a customer, because whether he has done this or not, it's disgusting, because you're using something that you surely must have known was a card or a payment method that was stolen. I don't, and Mr. Singh doesn't believe for 1 second he wasn't aware of that. And therefore, you know, trying to use our Mr. Singh's shop facility for that purposes is deeply, deeply disgusting. And even if it was him that carried out the actions of mischief, so bad and profound of what their ordeal may have been and what they went through and what they are continuing to go through, they're never allowed back in the shop at all. And that's anybody that's associated to him, not just him himself. It's any association to him and his close.
Okay.
Could I just step in for a moment? My device is about to go flat. Could you just give me a couple of seconds to ensure it's charging up?
Yeah.
Thing.
Okay.
Flynn, yeah.
I've just got one more question in there now.
We'll just wait for the nod from Councillor Flynn. I think he's. Are you ready to carry on, Councillor Flynn? Yeah. Okay. Carry on.
Okay.
Marshall.
Yeah. Thank you for answering those questions. So my last question regarding the card, that will be to Mrs. Sheriff. Just a quick question. You know, the card that got stolen, what's the, how is your name spelled on your card? How is it written? Sorry, not spelled. How is it written? So do you have just J Sheriff or do you have Joanne Sheriff? And do you have your title on the card as well?
Ms. J Sheriff.
So you've got an MS on there?
Yes.
Right. So why I'm asking that question, Mr. Singh, is because you have said to me that the gentleman said it's his father's card. And MS, in terms of gender, that will be female?
No, just to clarify this point, the card, as we said in our submissions, was shown to the shop assistant. That was a physical card shown to the shop assistant. Mr. Singh has had words with the shop assistant and said you need to be more prudent. Mr. Singh, when he checked the card, it was on the phone and there was no name shown. It was just simply digits. Mr. Singh went forward and asked further questions. Whose card is it that you're making the payments with? And that's when he said it was his father's. Mr. Singh asked to say, show me a picture, and he's shown him a picture. So this isn't one single transaction or one payment method we're of the understanding of. This must be 1, 2, or 3 different payment methods, and we're not too sure, and we haven't made the inquiry with the merchant provider.
Okay. Thank you very much. No more questions, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I've got a few questions. I'll start with PC Clifford, and then I'll move on to Mr. Cheema and Mr. Singh. They're really quite simple questions that probably just deserve a quite simple answer, if that's okay. The cards that were stolen, were they used anywhere else, PC Clifford, or is it just purely in the shop that they were used?
No, the cards were used for like one transaction in another shop elsewhere.
Right, before or after these transactions?
After.
After, okay. And have Mr. Cheema or have Niels, I guess is what we're calling it, we've been asked to call it, have Niels cooperated with the West Yorkshire Police in regards to their investigation?
Absolutely, we've had our arms open.
I'm asking Mr. Clifford, Mr. Cheema, I'm asking Mr. Clifford, PC Clifford.
Oh, sorry, I apologise.
Okay.
In relation to that, I would need to speak to the investigating officer because there's a detective investigating that who brought this to our attention. The only thing he said that it was difficult to get the CCTV due to logistics of how it's set up, but I would have to ask that question of the investigating officer, and I've checked he's not working.
Okay, and then the CCTV that you mentioned, or that we reviewed earlier, was that requested and was it freely given by the owners, or was it almost sort of demanded that the CCTV be handed?
Again, I'd have to ask the specific question. Speaking to the officer a long time ago about it, it didn't sound as straightforward and easy, but I couldn't say for certain whether that was more to do with the logistics of the setup or whether it was more of an evasive attitude, but I would have to confirm that.
Okay, well, I'll put the same question then to Mr. Put the same question then to Mr. Cheema and Mr. Singh. Was the CCTV offered freely when it was requested, or was there a delay in getting the CCTV?
We've always given CCTV freely to the police, and on this occasion we did give it freely. And just to add a bit more point why there was a delay, the type of DVR system that we had in operation at that time, the officer wasn't aware of how to use it or download the data. So he had to get his IT specialist guy from the West Yorkshire Police to come in a couple of days later, and then he extracted what he needed off the system. We've never obstructed any police inquiry with CCTV being given.
Okay. And then, so just on your CCTV, you insinuated there that the CCTV that you had then, you kind of implied that you've got a different CCTV system now?
Yeah, that's right. As a result of this crime and how we saw the poor quality of the CCTV, we've uprated all our CCTV, add additional outside cameras around the side, around the back, and a hell of a lot more inside the shop itself to assist even more where we can, if we can.
Okay. And then, so you mentioned earlier, Mr. Cheema, Mr. Singh, you mentioned earlier that it's regular that you'll have people coming in to buy alcohol and cigarettes for people that are outside of the shop. Are you checking then to see that the age of the people that they're buying the alcohol for outside, or are you contesting that when they come in to purchase it? Are you asking the reasoning behind their coming in and out and there's a group of people outside? What would be the process involved there?
Okay, so some of the groups do come into the shop together, or we're aware that the customer will say so-and-so's outside and what does he normally drink? Because Mr. Singh and Niels as a whole knows the customers quite well and what they drink. So when we say they are buying for a group, it's them buying it for a group. And to be fair, do we know if that person's out there or not? We don't actually know. But no one mills around the shop. And that's why we found it quite difficult to understand how the West Yorkshire Police have said we allow people to mill outside the shop. We don't.
So So what I guess I'm asking is that so somebody can come into the shop, but purchase for somebody out, a group of people outside the shop, and there'll be no challenge taken then as to where the alcohol's being taken.
No, that's not it. So let's say yourself comes in with 4 other friends that might be sat in a vehicle outside. You'll come in and make a purchase and say, oh, so-and-so's with me, what does he drink? That's as far as we know that they're in a group of people. Who else is in that group? We don't really know.
Okay. I noticed on the CCTV, is it normal practice not for some transactions not to go through the till and to just be used contactless using the card machine and the till not to be used? Is that common?
It's quite common. It's due to sometimes internet signal connection. The merchant, for some reason, has
I don't think you've understood the question. The question is, on the CCTV, we witnessed multiple transactions going through the card machine, but the same transaction wasn't going through the actual till. So the journal roll on your till would be different to what your actual contactless payments are.
That's fine. So if you reflect back onto the CCTV, the roll that comes out of what they call the PDQ machine, which is a card machine, goes in a separate box to the right-hand side, and they keep all the transaction receipts in a box to the side. The till itself doesn't print. It's a very old till, and therefore the roll inside the till is basically only used as a calculator.
So your takings for the day are not calculated by the journal roll of the till. It's a combination, I guess, of the till and the PDQ machine. Is that how you're doing it?
It's a bit more than that. The lottery machine is independent. The PayPoint machine is independent. The PDQ machine for card payments is independent, and the till is independent. And it's an amalgamation of all of them to work out what the daily takings are and submit to the accountant.
Okay. You know, on some of the transactions, it was sort of seen on the CCTV that the card payment was taken first, and then once that had been approved, that then the bottle behind would then be reached and taken off the shelf and then handed to the customer. Is that a common practice that you do? Because I noticed it didn't happen on every transaction, just on a few of the transactions, almost as if waiting for an authorization or an approval from the card machine before the goods are given. Is that standard?
It is something that slips the shop assistants and Mr. Singh's mind sometimes, but their process is always two if there's more than one person in the shop, because historically someone has stolen somebody else's goods that's been put on there and the customers refuse to pay, quite rightly so, because they haven't physically purchased the item and they run off. We have a conscious effort to try and leave the door closed for that reason. So yes, we do say that there is, when you purchase items like that, that payment is first.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Is shoplifting and people running off with goods rife in the area? Specifically, I guess more so in rather than in the area. So let's be specific and say your shop. Do you have a high volume of shoplifting and people running off with goods?
About 10, 15 years ago, when it first opened, in the first few years, people tried their luck. But in the last 10 years, 15 years, there's probably few and far between instances. The only major instances.
In the last month, how many would you say as people have either ran off or you've had shoplifting in your shop in the last month?
None.
Okay.
But what we could say is the last two major incidents were the armed robberies against the shop assistants on two separate occasions, and that was going back 3 years ago was the last one, and before that was about 8 years ago. They're the most significant robberies that have taken place in the shop.
Okay, and now, when this has been happening, so can I just get into my own head that, so for youth entering into the shop, looking quite significantly shifty, I guess is the word I'm looking for, into the shop using a card machine over and over and over again, buying lots of large volumes of alcohol in and out over an hour's period. Use that as well, because you said that your customers. That's common. That happens. That doesn't ring alarm bells that you think something's untoward there. Is that normal practice?
In the area, it's quite common. People wear their hoodies when they come into the shop. Multiple transactions are what happen, quite commonly. Historically, like we said, this is the first instance that we're aware of. In fact, there's one other instance where a card was found to be stolen or it was illegally used in the 27 years that Neil's has operated there. So, there is a process that works. Otherwise, we would have had, or Neil's would have had, a far more higher volume of illegal transactions that would take place if Neil's weren't prudent in when taking card payments, and even so far as the sale of alcohol and things such as that. It's a significant period of time, more than a generation. There's only 2 instances of illegal card being used.
Okay.
That's really.
Okay, and then I've just got one last question, I guess, from myself. What have, since realizing what has happened, what have you put in place to prevent anything happening like this again?
Okay, so there has been more posters put up that we will check every single ID, irrespective of whether we've seen it historically or not, until we saw clarification that if we know someone's age or Neil's knows someone's age, are they required still to check their ID? And so that was the last submission that we made. We've reshaped the shop and added additional cameras. We've barred the group itself of people that we believe may be associated to this particular crime that happened on the 31st. We've added additional cameras outside, and if we find anybody milling or anywhere, we make them abundantly aware that there's cameras watching you constantly, you need to move on. It's not a place to loiter. And we've gone so far as even having the West Indian takeaway next door owner to employ the same, that we say that we don't allow anybody in this parade, wherever they are. They simply need to buy what they need to buy and go. We made the West Indian takeaway owner as well aware of the incident that took place, and we've also made him aware of who the potential suspects are, and that he should tread with caution if he wishes to serve them, although we wouldn't recommend that they are served. We know they live local in the area, and this would then send a clear message to them that when people are aware that they have such people carrying out these actions, that the community get together and basically isolate them to make them aware that you won't just be punished by the authorities, you'll be punished by local community as well.
Okay, and I mean, just based on what you've just said there, then, so I'm guessing the information that you have to identify these individuals will be passed on to PC Clifford to assist in their investigation.
Absolutely. We've been in touch with the police on many occasions. They still haven't responded to the letter that we sent, which is Appendix E, I believe. And that sets out everything in there. We invited them on many occasions within that letter that come and work with us. We've said in that letter, we're not making a complaint to the police. We're more than happy to support the police. We've made that, take reference to Appendix E. It's quite clear what we're saying. To date, we still don't have a response. We think that that's quite profound, and that the panel should be aware of that. It's okay, the police come in today and saying that we've done wrong and things such as that. Let's bring those to justice that need to be brought to justice that carried out these horrific crimes on Miss Sheriff. Let the bank then make collect its money back from these individuals, should they have such. To target somebody that is completely innocent in this. I mean, we're not playing judge and jury here, and that's for the police to understand their actions of what else they could have done to assist the sheriff to bring the suspects to justice. But we have abundant of information for them to bring them to justice. They can quite clearly come forward to us at any point. We're more than willing to assist.
Okay, that's good to know. Councillor, I'm done with questions and comments. Councillor Flynn, do you have any more to come back with?
Yes, if it's an appropriate question, perhaps Rob could guide me on it. We have a number of options, basically, once we've heard all the all the presentations today. I think there are 6 altogether, from a warning about future behaviour, basically to revocation of the licence. But PC Clifford has made it clear that he wants revocation. During the course of the various presentations, we've heard that there have been 2 incidents of fraud carried out at the shop. If I count this particular evening as 1 incident rather than 29 or 30, with a previous one of using a card that wasn't the property of the person who made the purchase. I just wondered why the police had gone for revocation rather than one of the less serious.
I think that's to you, PC Clifford.
So the question is why we've gone straight for revocation rather than something different. The reason I laid out in my covering statement provided is basically that we felt like the issue was too deep rooted to be able to work with it. Because of course I could have gone and said, you know, maybe a few transactions, been a few transactions just to make you aware this is happening in your local area. What, 30 transactions, £700? I think that's an obvious thing for them to pick up on. And after viewing the CCTV and a number of officers viewing it, we came to the conclusion that there's something really wrong here that working with them is not going to solve, because we feel like we felt like there's that kind of understanding. They knew exactly where to go, and it's not just about the the transactions. There's alcohol being sold there. You know, how can anybody justify selling to those young boys? They look so young, and they say about ID previously, but the fact remains he was a child. So there were so many red flags that I didn't feel like it was appropriate to attempt to work with them just to be paid maybe lip service or whatever. Because even now, with the facts presented, there's no real responsibility taken by the shop even now. So I think in hindsight, would I have had any kind of luck with them previously? And I think the answer is probably no, based on what's been said today.
Councillor Flynn, do you want to come back on any more? Are you okay? Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, I just have one more question for Mr. Cheema and Mr. Singh. Of the number of gentlemen, the boys who came into your shop, how many of them have you banned from coming into the store?
All of them.
And that's how many, please?
Probably about 7 or 8 off the top of my head. Let me just ask Mr. Singh. There's about 7 that we know that are associated. Five or 6 that we know directly. They're basically a group of very good friends. And
can I just come in and say, is it 5 or is it 6? 5 or 6 is a bit vague. Is it 5 or 6?
Sorry, Mr. Singh will just run through the names in his head and he'll confirm the number in a second.
I'd say 5, definitely 5.
And you know the 5 of them, and you also know their ages. Are you confirming that?
We know the individuals that we serve, the ages. The others, we don't know the ages we did serve, but they're associated with them.
Okay, you don't know their ages of the 5 of them, or you only know the 2 that you served. Those are the 2 that you know their ages.
No, what Mr. Singh is saying, the 5 individuals that have been banned, he knows the ages of the 5 individuals.
Right.
That were banned. So the 2 that are suspected in the CCTV, and their close-knit friends, and in all fairness, their close-knit friends are over the age of 18 as well, that we've banned. So
and those 2 are those 2 amongst the 5?
Yes, those 2 are amongst the 5. So there's 5 in total, including the 2 suspects in this case.
And the 2 of them are definitely over 18 from what you have checked, from the IDs you have checked.
100%, yes.
Okay, thank you.
They've obviously got a false document or multiple documents which suggest different ages. I don't know. I don't know what ID the police saw for who they say is the 17-year-old.
What IDs do you check?
Anything with a hologram or photographic, well, it has to be photographic with a hologram and date of birth on it. So it has to have government issue documents are the best ones. We expect student IDs because we know they're verified by a passport as well.
So do you think these two have given you a false ID?
From what the police are saying now, that they identify him as a 17-year-old, whether the police has been given false ID by him or whether we have been provided is yet to be seen. We don't know what the police have provided as ID, but we can say that what we was provided as ID was a student card. But if we think it's the one that they're talking about, but if they come and talk to us, we can talk about whose passport we saw and whose student ID we saw, as that might be another defence in respect of what they've told the police. But like we said, we're willing to work with them and we can bottom these questions out.
Okay, and so these two students or these two young boys would have given you a passport, an international passport or a student ID, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. No more questions, Chair.
Okay, members of the subcommittee, any further questions from anybody? Please indicate no. Okay, the subcommittee will now move into a private session to deliberate on the application. Could I ask that all parties, including the applicant and their representatives and the licensing officer, remain available should the subcommittee have any additional questions? If there are any additional questions, we'll be invited back into the meeting by the clerk. Over to you, Natasha.
Thank you. We'll pop you into a breakout room now.
Thank you. Is everybody here?
Yeah, Mr. Singh and Mr. Cheema are here.
Okay, thank you. I believe we've got everybody else. Yeah. So thank you very much for attending today. And in this new way that we're having to conduct the licensing subcommittees. Thanks everybody for their patience when we've gone to the breakout rooms to watch the CCTV, and also the patience where we've been taken to deliberate now. We have come to a decision, and that decision will be informed to the applicant and the license holder in written form within the next 5 days. So that concludes the business for today. Thank you very much, everybody.
Sorry, Councillor, could we just say 5 working days?
Sorry, 5. What did I say?
5 days, I think.
5. Sorry, 5 working days. Yeah, sorry. Okay, thanks everybody.
Sorry, it's Mr. Cheema. I just have a very quick question. Who do we seek clarity on? I presume it's probably Matthew in respect of the question we asked, if we know someone's age, is there a requirement to still ask for ID?
That's not really a question for this hearing. If you want to contact entertainment licensing separately, you're perfectly entitled to do so.
Okay, that's fine. Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Did you just motion to Councillor Flynn?
I was just about to wave bye-bye when the question was asked.
Oh. Okay, thanks everybody. Cheerio.